Hello everyone, this is my video response to Pink Elephant. I gotta start responding to some of these videos I'm getting, so here goes. You started off by saying that even with the most perfect solution it could take hundreds of years to reverse all the damage that's been done. That's one of the most unfortunate things about this whole situation, is that even if we come up with a solution today, we still probably won't get to see the fruits of our labor. It'll be our grandchildren or their children. But I think that the solution that I've come to embrace, we could see a drastic improvement in just 2 generations. I want to skip ahead in your video to where you were talking about the layers of cake, which is funny because I was telling one of my buddies the same thing, except I was calling it tiers. There's 3 tiers. Yes, of course you can start on the bottom and move all the way up to the top, but that is not the norm. If it was easy to do that, then we wouldn't have a bottom layer to begin with, or it would be very small. Now, you could definitely start up in the top tier and fall down. You know, gravity pulls down, not up. And that's what I've been trying to tell people who are being overly optimistic about this problem that we have. We cannot count on people being born in the lowest tier and raising them up to the middle or the top. That's too much work. We need, like you said, Pink Elephant, we need people to be born at a certain level so that it's just already, I won't say it's already in them, but they're already accustomed to living a certain standard. If someone came to me right now and said, I want you to create a city full of people who like anchovies, you know what the first thing I would do would be? Go find people who like anchovies, and if possible, I would find people who were raised on anchovies. That is the quickest way to build a city full of people who like anchovies, is to get people who already like them. But what these overly optimistic people are saying is it doesn't matter who you put in the city because we can teach everyone to like anchovies. We can show them the nutritional value, we can do this, we can do that, we can teach them. Some of the people, you are never going to get them to like anchovies. It's an acquired taste and some people just don't like it. And for some of the people who you can get to like anchovies, that's fine, but that's a huge waste of time when you can just start off with people who like them in the first place. Here's a real world example of what I'm talking about. I went back to my hometown a few months ago and I went into this mall that I hadn't been into since I was like a little kid. And I went into one of the stores that was a department store, so they had carpet on the floor, and there were like huge stains on the carpet. And these were the kind of stains that you could tell they had been there for a while. And also, you know, like when you drop gum on carpet and people trample over it a whole bunch of times and it turns black and it looks like a piece of rubber, there was stuff like that on the floor too. Now, if that store was in the neighborhood that I live in right now, that store would go out of business because people would walk in, see those stains, and walk out because they're accustomed to a certain standard. People who are born into a standard where it's okay to walk into a store and see stains on the ground, or when you walk into a grocery store and the first thing you smell is the meat department, that's normal to them, so they're not going to demand better. There are some people who, if they went to their child's school and they saw cracks in the walls, they saw mold in the bathrooms, in the cafeteria just looked nasty, okay, they would pull their kids out of there so fast they would knock you down if they got in their way. But some people, it's just normal to them, so they send their kids to the schools, no problem, you won't hear a peep out of them. No complaining about how the building looks, no complaining about how the books are all torn up, no complaining at all, just whatever scraps you throw us, we'll be happy with it. Now, you said something else about some of the people who are born in the middle class can move up to the top tier, and then some people who are on the bottom tier can even move up to the top tier. And you referred to athletes and entertainers. When you're talking about moving from the bottom tier to the top tier, then you really have to consider how that person got their money or how they moved up to the top tier. Just because someone happens to have money like the top tier doesn't mean they're actually in the top tier. Because, like, take somebody who wins the lottery, but before they won the lottery, they didn't know how to handle money. So you give them all this money, and then in a few years, they squander it all, and they're actually poorer than they were before they got the money. There's more to being in the top tier than just having money, because if you don't know how to spend that money, if you don't know how to use it, then you're just going to lose it, and you'll be back in the middle class or the lower class. When you talk about athletes moving up to the top tier, yes, they made a lot of money, and yes, they earned it, but they earned it doing something that most people are never going to be able to do, even their own children. So to pass on that legacy, they're going to have to teach their children how to do something else. I mean, unless their children are very, very good athletes, they're going to have to teach them to do something else to maintain that level of wealth. Otherwise, they really didn't raise up out of the bottom tier. They just got a whole bunch of money. Take somebody like Donald Trump. He's teaching his kids how to do what he does. He takes them to board meetings. I think he even has his daughter running one of his companies. See, he can hand down his legacy to his kids. He can give them his companies. He can give them his knowledge, and so they can continue on what they're doing. If you're an NBA player, you can't leave your NBA contract to your son so he can just pick up where you left off. No, really, he has to start back from square one in a way, because if he wants to make it in the NBA, he's got to make it himself. He can't live off your legacy. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't help him any, but still, if he can't play, then there's just no way they're going to let him in. But Donald Trump is passing on the knowledge as well as the wealth to his kids, so they're more likely to be able to maintain it than an NBA player's child. The point you made about how to maintain certain standards, I couldn't have said it better myself. If you are a man or a woman or whatever and you want to maintain your standards, you need to marry someone who has that same standard. You need to make friends with people who have that same standard. You need to live in the area with people who have that same standard. You can't expect to marry somebody who has totally different standards than you and expect to change them to uphold your standards. That's too much work, and it might not work in the end. So it's just better to start off with somebody who has a certain standard. As a matter of fact, if you have high standards and you marry somebody who has low standards, they're more likely to pull you down than you are to pull them up. I want to comment on what you said about it's going to take some time to build up the black middle class because people have to be born into it. Well, see, the problem with that is that people in the lower class are having more kids than people in the middle and upper class. So even if the middle and upper class continue to grow, it's not going to grow as fast as the lower class. That's the problem. That's the problem we need to be focused on. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll just make one last point and say that if you want to build a strong house, the best way to do that is to get the best material you can find.